Hello everyone and welcome to the most underpaid podcast in the world, House of Games. Today I'm joined by my broke-ass brother, no! But if that was not miserable enough, today we're also, as almost always, joined by another guest, Mr. Oskar. But before I let you rap, let's brah down that door and enter the ghetto House of Games.
Welcome everyone to this week's episode of House of Games. And today we have a special episode as usual, but this time we've tried out the game that we are about to talk about. Before we go any further, I think I will let the creator introduce himself.
Alright, my name is Oskar. I am the developer of the game Orten Was The Case. I'm a former animator in the games industry that 2 years ago decided to go my own path, try to make my own indie game, and yeah, it's soon done.
Perfect. And for our international listeners, could you just give us an explanation of what the title means and then just give a sort of a helicopter view of what it is and how the idea came to you to make this game?
Sure. So Orten, it's a Swedish word. It's basically a short or slang word for suburb. So suburb in Swedish is förorten, so orten is just a short version of that word. So the game takes place in a fictional Swedish suburb, and Orten was the case. It's actually a wordplay thing of the old Snoop Dogg lyric, murder was the case that they gave us, but shortened to just Orten was the case. I felt like making a game that is set in Sweden, but not like the regular red houses with white corners, more in the suburb area. It's a fictional suburb, but it's based of the southern suburbs of Stockholm, like where I grew up and still living. So inspiration is taken from like all around here, like people and the setting and everything. The game is a puzzle adventure game. It's not a point-and-click game, but you move freely, and it has this time loop mechanic. So everything plays out in real time during 12 minutes, and then something happens, like a catastrophe happens, and it resets, and you wake up again, and you go through this loop. Every loop, you learn something new. I like to call it a Metroidvania, where knowledge is the gatekeeper. It's all based on knowledge. If you were really lucky, you could potentially complete the game in your first loop, but it's highly unlikely.
So we've played a little bit of it, both of us. So I would just say that it's just such a... when I looked at the game before launching it in Steam, I didn't know what to make of it. But after playing it, it was really like an amazing experience. I don't know what it is about it. It's like, at the same time, it's so very like grimy, but at the same time it's very beautiful in a way. And there's like, quality voice acting, there's story, there's characters. It feels like so much love put into this game. So for how long have you worked on it from the idea stage to now?
I sure put in a lot of like effort and heart into it. I poured everything into it, and it's really hard to tell exactly how long I've been working on it. I mean, I think I started about 7 years ago or something, but back then I didn't know anything about programming, so it includes my whole learning process to learn code. And I mean, I did it as a little experiment at first beside my full-time job, so I just very casual in the evenings and stuff like that. I just built upon this, and it became like more and more until I finally started to feel like, okay, this is maybe becoming a real game. And I continued, and then I had done so much so I couldn't stop. And 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 soon, I decided to take some time off from my job at Hazelight, where I was lead animator, and just to see if this could fly, if I could make this. And yeah, it felt like, okay, it might work. So I eventually resigned, and last 2.5 years I've been working on it full time.
That's I was gonna say the animations are really good, and I can tell that you've been working with that in the past. It's just like indie game made by one person, and this quality of animations is extremely impressive. I also wonder how is it made in 3D or is it? It's I mean, it's sort of come across as a 2D game, but it is a 3D world, right?
Yeah, so it is actually, the whole thing is a 3D world. Everything is 3D, even the backgrounds. But I like projected, I think you say, like I did a projection of the like 2D texture from the camera angle onto the mesh, and then just use like unlit shaders, so it still looks exactly as the painting, but it is a 3D world.
Interesting. So it is actually like invisible box colliders and stuff like that. You're running in the Z-axis. If for example, in the beginning of the game, you can run up to this park. So I'm actually running in the Z-axis there.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
And to me, like the gameplay, the world, it sort of reminds me a lot of one part of the world, I think, that Rune is creating for Sunset Moon, his game. So I'm really curious, Rune, about your like perception of this like game and your thoughts about it. Yeah,
I just had a presentation 2 weeks ago, whatever, about my game, and one of the first thing I said is it's this small island, and it's basically Japanese and Swedish culture combined. So to you, Oskar, it's basically imagine like Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley. You have these festivals, for example, and in my game there's Midsummer Festival, for example. So there's a lot of like Swedish references in my game, and another, which was one of the first thing I realized when I played the game, it's like what I'm working on, but it's totally different. The games are totally different in so many ways, but still it was like that was quite similar in that sense. And also I love the pin code thing you have, because I've released some previous games with a pin code thing. I was like, wow, it's just we're doing the same thing, which is really cool.
Nice. I need to see that.
Yeah, it's a 2D ecchi anime game, so it's like I say, it's not like your game, but just that pin code thing was very much like my game, so that was cool.
Yeah, the whole area sort of feels like Rune, you have described your like part of town that is like your shanty town that you have in your game, and this whole game I think really resembles that feeling I think that you're going for as well. So like the environment, Oskar, as you said, is not like the white picket fences and upper class neighborhood. It's rather sort of the hood, so to speak, sort of like it's grimy and it's people everywhere, and it's maybe a poor neighborhood, I would classify it as, and it makes it so interesting to discover it, because it's not clear from the beginning where you can go and where you can't go, and where people live, and all kinds of things. Yeah,
and I also thought about one more similarities between Sunset Moon and Orten is I call my game a mini open world. So it's a very small world. So I haven't played your entire game yet, so I don't know how small the game is, but my game is very compact with a lot of stuff in it. And when I play your game, I get that sense too. Like there's so many places I can go and sort of hidden rooms, and obviously I need a key to get in here. It's just like, it's really nice. I love that sense of, like I said, I don't know how big the entire game is, and I don't really want to spoil anything. So, but when you go into the subway station and you go to the right, and then there's a door there into this sort of underwater place, right? And that was like, wow, that's a cool thing to experience on your own, and it's just the sense that it's a very small game, but it's so packed with details, and obviously. I can totally see that you poured so much love and care into all these details that I see everywhere. I wrote down in my docket here, like the first cap you find, it's clearly a Mighty Ducks caps, right?
Yeah, it's not the same logo, but it's inspired. Yes. So it's supposed to like be set in the 90s somewhere.
Yes.
Like
that's exactly
like the area right before mobile phones. I
yes.
guess.
Absolutely. I don't know how old you are, but I there was so many references in the game. I felt like, wow, this is like it reminds me of my childhood in some weird way.
Nice. Yeah, that's what I was striving for. Make a lot of these references and stuff that people can recognize. Like, yeah. So even though it's a made-up fictional suburb, but if you lived in Sweden or live in Sweden, you can still recognize stuff to feel like, yeah, I recognize this place, even though it's very exaggerated. I mean, as you mentioned, Shantytown is like, I also just did it for because I like the looks of it. It's not like representative of it how it actually looks, but it fits the story. It is, as you say, this is like a place on the side of like society, something like that. But it's not representative of like Farsta, for example, where a lot of like inspiration is based. But yeah, the story of it will if you complete the story of it, it will make sense why it is like this and why.
Yeah, I mean it's sort of funny because I recently moved to Stockholm, so for me I feel like sort of like a really fun to sort of recognize things from like the city I'm living in this game. And also one thing, I'm not gonna spoil any of it, but this game is just, to me at least, I played it in Swedish, so it's really funny. I mean, a lot of the dialogue and like the ideas and the stuff, and you know, the fact that you can wear a tinfoil hat, for example. There's a lot of stuff that's just humorous to me and made me laugh. So that's really rare, I would say, nowadays that games even attempt to do. So just kudos to that. It's sort of such a unique. Yeah,
it's
a unique experience.
Nice to hear that the humor of it gets through. I thought like, yeah, it has such a serious vibe to it and also kind of serious messaging. So I tried to like weight it, like balance it with a lot of humor as well, so you can laugh at it.
I wanted to, like Oda told me, to play it in Swedish, and like I do not understand ghetto Swedish or like any of those words. It felt like I was playing in a different language.
Oh, really?
So I changed it over to English. Yeah, but sorry, I'm an idiot, and I'm not into gangster stuff, and I've been living abroad my adult life, where I think this whole gangster culture in Sweden maybe became a thing. I do know there's like a gangster show on TV.
But I don't see it as gangster at all, to be honest. I just wrote like how I saw these people talk, and I didn't actually think it was that much slang. I mean, some characters have it a little more than others, but otherwise, yeah, I don't like to call it like. It's also like it's not today's society, so it's not Orten 2023. So yeah, to me it's not any gangster actually.
Well, yeah, when I worked in Sweden last time, I worked in a facility, and then there was a guy who was into these shows on TV, and then he basically taught me a bunch of gangster words that I have never heard in my life. So I don't know if it's because I've been living abroad for too long, or if it's something that happened in Sweden for the past 50 years when I've been living abroad.
It could be also just different like Stockholm slang, I guess.
But it was also, one of my points with playing it in Swedish first with this gangster language that I don't understand, it's like it felt quite cryptic. So I was like, I wrote down one of the lines here, so I translated it to English now. So he says like, "Aiten, tagga zip bag, blue sandbox, tomten guy in wheelchair change the para," and it was very weird in Swedish. So I was like, I don't really understand what's going on here. And then I sort of tried to understand, like, I don't know. I just felt like I didn't understand the what I would call it gangster language. But I changed it to English, and it was easy to understand. But it was quite interesting, though, to play it in Swedish first, because I felt like it became cryptic and sort of like a puzzle in of itself for me, as someone who doesn't clearly don't even understand Stockholmers language. So to me, it was fun to play it in Swedish first to
nice.
try to figure these things out. Because in that sentence, for example, I just happened to remember that the last loop I did, there was a sandbox over there to the right. So I thought, well, I should probably go there. And I didn't even know what para meant. And I think that's money, right?
Yeah, it's the currency in the game.
But it's not para, like a gangster word for para.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a common slang for money, like para.
Yeah, there was kulor is another slang. I met a guy from Gothenburg and he talked about making kulor. And I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? And to me, living in Japan, I was thinking like pachinko machines. Like, is he a pachinko gamble guy or what's going on? And I was like, oh, you have to stop saying kulor. What are you talking about? It's like, oh, it means money. I'm like, oh, okay. I learned something.
Well, on that point, I'm curious, since I only played it in Swedish, so as the creator, Oskar, how would you say that you would translate all of these like references and slang and stuff to English? Was it something that was like easy, or is it something that you had to...
I mean, that's not easy because, of course, English is not a native language, and like translating stuff as well. I mean, it all depends on where in the world, I guess. Like, you could say even like American cities would have like totally different slang. Like for this instance, like Stockholm, if a guy from Umeå doesn't understand Stockholm slang, I guess it's even worse in like in the English. As it is right now, I have just translated it myself, and it's a little bit less slang words in the English for obvious reasons, and but I have a guy right now that is a translator that will just proofread it and also like see so it doesn't mix and match like words like you wouldn't say that. So it will get one layer of polish upon it from the current state.
That's a very interesting thing you have to, like, when you play games, you don't think about that, I reckon. Someone from America will play Orten and then probably don't double take at all on the fact that you have had this thought in your mind, like, well, how do I translate these words? And should I do to English or to American English, or what should I do? In my game, I have the same sort of, like, I prefer British English and like the British slangs and all that stuff. But I do know from listening to podcasts, for example, that's a lot of Americans finds that annoying to read lad or like these British words. And the same thing, I remember when I played Ni no Kuni on PlayStation 3, there's that little character that running around with you. He is he's a Welsh person, or his accent, and even his dialogue, the text, they use these weird words, and I also found that to be quite annoying, like, because I don't know these words, or I have never heard them before, so I had no clue how to read them, or sometimes I wouldn't even know what they meant. And that's not because I'm Swedish. I think even an American person would have the same problem with certain slang. So I can imagine what sort of dilemma you're in regarding that. Like, should you take it to, like, should you really go all in on the slang stuff because that's sort of the world you're creating, or should you sort of hone it back a little bit to make sure that the players understand it? That's a tricky thing to balance, I suppose.
Yeah, it is tricky. But as I said, I have a guy right now that is a translator proofreading it, and just to, because I still want it to be kind of like a speech language, not like written, especially for the dialogues. And there are a few characters that have like slang. More of the youth characters use more slang, but there are a lot of like older people as well that don't talk so much. That is like more standard Swedish, or even like older Swedish. So it depends on the characters as well. But I still want it to be I want to represent it to be representable. Like, the characters to be believable. Like, this character would probably talk this way.
And could you tell us a little bit about, so you did this game on your spare time and having a second or a main job that was not doing this game. So could you just like describe the history of going from doing this as a hobby project to doing it full time, and what have you done since? Have you done like all of the game all by yourself, or have you had like a publisher or something to help you with somebody with art or music or something like that, or how's the process been like?
When I did it as like a hobby project, as I said, I combined it with my whole learning process of the coding, and while I was doing that, I basically built the whole map. So I painted it all and like modeled it, and step by step like implemented different systems that I knew I would use in the game. So when I decided to take time off, I was like, okay, I have a lot of systems in place, and I have like the whole map, and I have basically my overarching story of it. So now I just need time to create like the in-game loop, the gameplay, the missions and stuff like that. So at first I just started like on my own, building upon that, and also realized I need to find like to show this to people. So before that I hadn't shown it to anybody. So then I realized I need to create social media accounts, create my Twitter, create TikTok, Instagram, whatever I could come up with, and start posting about it. And yeah, there I found I don't have a publisher, but I have a little investment, and I have help with porting to consoles. I share a little studio here in Stockholm, in Hagsätra, with like 10 friends. It's not a real company, but we just hang out and like paint canvas paintings and like play music and stuff like that. It's more like a hobby place where we just hang out and have fun. So there we have a recording studio and lots of instruments and stuff. So I for all the audio I had help from 2 friends, Max and Robin, that has been making all the music, all the sound effects and stuff like that. But everything else I have done myself in the game, like the animation and art and programming and story and dialogues and everything. And that.
Wow. You said you painted the graphics. Like, what exactly do you mean by that? Like, do you use Photoshop, or do you use a software, or is it like real physical paintings that you somehow?
It actually started out like at first the first like concept idea for the game was actually a canvas painting painted with acrylics and Posca pens. So it was. I dropped that. The first thing I did was to like drop that as a background into Unity. But I soon realized like it doesn't hold up like the graphical fidelity that I need. So then I started to paint it digitally in Photoshop. So I paint it in Photoshop. I usually like do a little 3D model, basic just block out of the room in Maya as a 3D model, and I take a snapshot of it from the camera angle. Then I do a paint over, and then I go back and like model it even more to fit the details and stuff. And
cool.
Yeah, that is my process.
Wow. So you had to learn Maya. Maya you knew before, right? Because you were an animator. But what about Photoshop? Did you learn that from scratch?
No, but I've been painting like Photoshop. I used Photoshop for a very long time before I learned Photoshop. Before I learned Maya, and painting I've like done like all my life basically. So that was no problem. And yeah, Maya, of course, I learned Maya and also use Motion Builder for animating, and that has been my work tools for the last 10 years working in the games industry. So I know those pretty well as well. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, the graphics are really stunning. I think they're unique, and it looks, like I said, because I wasn't quite sure if it's made in Photoshop or if it's like real paintings. It's almost difficult to tell how it's made, but that's cool. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say almost that it's hard to tell that it's 3D when you are playing it, because it's somehow it's made so that it absolutely looks like a painting or like 100% 2D. But as you play it, of course, you can walk around, walk towards and away from the camera, and walk up and down and all kinds of things. So just it's a really mesmerizing game, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, that was my goal as I set out. Like, I need to keep it to look like identical to the painting. That I don't want to see any mesh edges and like 3D like polygons. No polygons should be visible, except for like the character models. Of course, they are 3D, and you can tell more easily that they are 3D.
I do have a question, because I have released a couple of sort of 18 plus games, and some people think that's a good thing because it becomes like more controversial, or it just get more attention. But going through the process, which before we started recording, you said you sort of through that process now to get it to console and all that stuff. I assume you have already done the ESRB 0 rating and all that stuff. But do you have any like, when you set out to make the game, was that something you thought about beforehand? Like, well, if I make this, because they're obviously smoking weed, for example, so that means it's going to get like a 16 plus or something like that. Was this something that you thought about, or were you just sort of, I want to make this game and then I bite the bullet later, sort of?
No, I did not think anything about that. It's like I just do this game like however I want it to be, and I don't really care about that. If it's 18, then it's 18. I don't want to like compromise on the vision just to
nice.
to like fit like a wider audience. That is not why I do this game.
Wonderful to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And I'm just curious about the release plan. So you mentioned console porting. So what is the plan for release? So do you know about when you are going to release it and for what platforms and so on? And yeah.
Yeah, it's still a little bit up in the air. I can't tell like a release date just yet. I like best case scenario would be to do a sim launch on PC and all other platforms, but I don't know how long the certification process will take. As you book like a time slot and like you can miss it, and then you get like a bug report back, and you have to fix that before it gets through. So it's like impossible to say how long the certification process will take, and also just have it to run on the lower end. I'm not looking to release it on any mobile devices or stuff like that, but last gen consoles at least, and this gen consoles as well. But like the last gen, that is something I didn't consider. Like when I started out, I just wanted to make this like work on my computer. That was good enough. And then like later on, I have been mindful of the resources that the older consoles have and try to optimize things and everything. So it's still some work left to do there on the optimization and make it run smoothly on whatever hardware I intend to release it on. But if everything takes too long with the certification, if it's too much hassle to get it to run smoothly on last gen, I consider releasing it first on PC, because the game is almost basically done. It's like 98%. I just do a little bug fixing and quality of life stuff, polish. So if I were to release it on PC, then it wouldn't be too far off, like 2 months, 1 month, like something like that. So we will see how everything goes. I think I'll give it like one certification round on the consoles and see, did it pass, did it not? If it didn't, depending on how long I had to wait, I might do another one, or I might do a PC release first.
I can give you some tips on the console stuff. I released 4 games, and I think I know what they're doing when they test the games. I will give you some tips after the show that you could keep in mind, unless you have already sent them over to various platform holders.
Yeah, we're in the process doing it. But yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah.
But I can also just more praise for me, but I can absolutely tell that it's really, optimized for being resource effective, because a lot of games that I try on my computer, unfortunately I only have my like potato ThinkPad computer at the moment, but for me there was like zero lag, and like the load times were really fast, and it was not once did I have any performance issues. So really kudos to that, because that's not always that people really take that into consideration, that they, of course, I understand that it's not easy to do, and you first and foremost want to create an amazing experience. But for this game, absolutely, I would say that it's a really well done job in optimization. I think.
Thank you. It comes a little bit of a surprise, but it's I'm not no like. I try to like profile the game, see what resources it takes and stuff, but I find it also really hard to understand that. So it's nice to hear that it works smoothly. Like I have I have two computers, and both of them runs it totally fine. But I have not tested it on like a lot of other hardware, so it's just very nice to hear that it works good.
And how have you? So the voice acting, I think, is really, it really brings the game to life, so to speak. So how have you done that? Because I can tell there are quite a lot of voices, what I could see, and they're quite like high quality. It feels like they must be done in a studio or something, because it's really good quality, and there's. Like the lines they say and stuff, it's really good writing, I think.
Oh, nice.
Lots of humor and stuff. So just tell me about that process.
Yeah. So credit is all on my friend Robin Karlheim, who is like I shared this studio with that I told before. Like it's just a group of friends, and like all the voices are just people either also from the studio or just friends visiting. As soon as some person like is there that just maybe you could fit this person, he just brings them in and will like just throw out a lot of like phrases and words and funny things. And yeah, it's a proper recording studio as well, so the quality should be good. But yeah, it's only like friends and close friends and people that we like have in our like surrounding, so everything is just dynamically just been done like Friday nights.
Well, I think especially my favorite character is Tomten. I don't know what it's called in English, if it's
nice.
the same, but yeah, he's a really humorous guy. Like, because the way it works when you talk to people is that they say some sort of random line, and then the text says something like actual, like preceding the dialogue. But then every time you click, it just comes up with a random line of dialogue that it plays. And it's just, for some reason, it really makes me laugh, that character that is like, yeah, I don't know if you played him in Swedish Rune, but he's really like a very chill character. So give my thanks to that voice actor. Really,
yeah,
really
it's
good.
My best friend Hannes. Actually, he's a really great guy. He was the like obvious choice for Tomten.
Yeah. Like, I'm curious, I'm not gonna, so please don't answer this question, but I'm really curious also about how, like, big the world is, because I've only played it, as I said, for about an hour and a half, and for me, I don't feel like I have explored all of it, because it feels like, even though it's sort of compact, very big, sort of, or there's, like, loads of stuff to explore, so just to create all of that, did you do that like at first, or did that like develop along with the story and gameplay, or?
I basically built the map like at first. Of course, I have polished it and like tweaked it and changed locations of stuff and a little bit. But I basically built the world first. Yeah, since I did also like the outside part does have like this one big building, and didn't really intend to have it like whole interior of that building at first, but now it has. So everything, like every window and door and everything, has like interior. So there is it might be some small doors that you can't go through that has nothing behind them, but most of the doors and windows and stuff have an interior, and then there is like a large underground portion also of the game. So it is quite large. It's probably bigger than you'd expect at first.
Cool.
I wanted it to feel like there is, like, exactly as you describe it, like I want it to feel like you feel that there is something more to explore. You don't really know when you have seen it all. Like there might be more.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly the feeling I got. That, and especially since the game sort of reminds you of the mechanics of Groundhog Day. So you sort of play the same. You have a couple of minutes per session, and then it restarts for some reason that I'm not gonna expose, because people should absolutely play it to find out. But it's sort of like, it's very interesting that it's, as you say, it's you don't really know when you have explored it all. So a lot of times I sort of got conflicted between, should I keep following the story here, or should I just keep going with this thing that just popped up and then maybe do the story next time or something. And then often I just got into a rabbit hole that was completely different from what I initially thought. And it really makes the game feel like really big and sort of hard to imagine how big it is. So really amazing.
Thank you.
I've never played this sort of reset game. I believe there are not many of them. I think Majora's Mask is kind of like that, right? From 64. And I think there's another one when you're in an apartment, but I can't remember what it's called.
12 minutes.
There we go. Yes. And 1 Minute Hero is also something like this. So this is actually the first time I play, apart from Majora's Mask back in the day, but this is the first time I play this kind of game. So to people who never played these sort of loop games, when the time loop is up, I can still run around and explore, and that's to learn more, and then the next time I reset the loop, I know where to go. That's the idea, right?
Yeah, when the time loop is up, then you inevitably die, so you can't continue like exploring. So you only have 12 minutes to explore, but the next time you wake up, like if you did something, you probably learned some new piece of information that enables you to go in another direction, the next loop. And I also have like checkpoints in missions, so you can restart from a specific point in time with whatever gear you had on you at that time. So you can also like use these checkpoints to like optimize, to like get there early with exactly the right gear that fits like the situation. You can prepare for a boss fight, for example, by picking up some useful gear for that and just trigger that checkpoint, so you can retry the boss without doing everything. I try to keep it from becoming repetitive as good as I can. But even though you live the same loop, like if you follow one mission and you get the clue at the end of that mission, you never have to do that again because you have gotten the clue. So hopefully, like I try to minimize the repetition, even though in its nature it is like you have to it's the same thing, like the loop is the same, but it varies depending on which direction you go and what characters you influence and stuff.
The clue in the end of, for example, that mission, is that something that is saved in your inventory, or that something you should just remember as a player?
No, so everything you need to keep track of, and that is also like how you measure progression in the game. Is it's only clues is stored in the logbook. So every clue you find, you keep that. I like to see it as physical objects reset during, like because of you loop back to where you started. So everything physical like resets. If you picked up items or characters, they begin at the same point, but all the knowledge, like your brain is still intact. Like you learn, the logbook represents like what you have learned, so clues are stored, and also timeline events, like when characters do stuff and if there is a condition to that. For example, like talking to this person makes her walk up the stairs, for example. Then it's on the timeline with a condition, like she will do that if you talk to her. So eventually you can like piece it all together and know what things, like what characters you need to influence in what ways to eventually solve the bigger mystery.
It sounds very like under the hood. It sounds very complicated. Like I'm quite impressed you pull that off, learning program from scratch and all that. It sounds, I can't quite even imagine, and I do a lot of programming, but I can't quite imagine how it would even look like.
It's been a lot to think about, like all these, like it's also why the time loop is like 12 minutes, because it's not only filling the world with people to talk to and items and stuff, it's also filling it with events that happen. And if I make it like too long, it will be too long, like too much time in between the events, so they will be harder to find and everything. But yeah, I that was like the first thing I set out to build, and it took very long time to build that system to keep track of everything, because I also realized I can't have everything like moving in the scene at one time. So I have to, like when I enter a room, I have to check what time it is and check what action that person is supposed to do at this time, and like spawn it in doing that at the exact right time. So yeah, it has become a quite complex system, but it works, I think.
Is it when you plan that, just from a creative point of view, do you do it like on a whiteboard at home, or like do you do pen and paper, or how exactly? Because there's so many things to keep on track.
I had like, I don't know, like 10, 20 different, like I tried like endless like methods of planning this. I had like this meme wall with like post-its and threads, like and I had all these different Google Docs. I have used Notion or Trello or whatever, but in the end I find it like my best planning tool is actually like in the game where everything is. So it's like, here I have it, here I have my systems. So in the end it's like I use the in-engine, like the game itself, like the timeline in the game, the everything in the game is my best planning tool. And then sometimes I transfer it out from the game to another, like paper or something. But so it's just a mix and match. It has been really hard to find a good planning tool that fits all my needs.
I can imagine pen and paper though. Like another similarities between Orten and my game is that the NPCs in my game, they have these schedules they do every day. And for example, if you get married in the game and you don't show up to your own wedding, you miss it. So it's not gonna be triggers that waits for you to go there. So it will be like, well, your wedding is on Sunday, 2:00. So if you don't show up, you miss it. But when I was playing your game, I was thinking that Tomten, when he picked up some stuff from that sandbox. So I missed it the first time, and I was thinking, shit, now I have to do it again. And then I felt like, but this is the stuff I want in my game, that you can miss stuff. After playing your game, I feel like that's a risky thing to do, because it can be both frustrating, but I also think that as a Soulsborne player who loves to get punished once in a while, there is something beautiful about it. And it also, it's a little bit more like, it feels real somehow. It feels like real life, you know. You miss shit. You miss the bus, you miss it, and it's always, fuck, I have to wait. But then, so that's that was something I thought about while playing it, but it would be fun to know what players think about it, like the players play.
Yeah. I mean, it is, of course, it can be frustrating, and it's the nature of the game. Like there could be some frustration, but they also try to smoothen it out, like find the it's also why like the first mission is very heavily on the timeline, like you have to find the first character in time and you have to be like on the second character on time, and it's like it's accompanied by these tutorials that tell you like you have to do this so you get to know the timeline, and also like the checkpoints and stuff like that at certain points to make it less repetitive, so you can go back. Like if you are late for the sandbox, you can take the checkpoint back to where you got the bag and just go there faster. But of course it will be frustration for some, and some doesn't like having a time constraint at all, so it's can be a little bit niche audience, of course, but I still feel like, as you say, you mentioned Majora's Mask, and that was actually like the first time I also experienced this time loop mechanic, and I just felt like, wow, the NPCs, the characters in the game, it feels so alive in a way that I had never experienced before, because it actually felt like they are going somewhere. They are not just randomly walking around, but this character could actually be like, I can follow him and see like what is he like up to, and it was so cool when I realized that in that game, that like, wow, this city feels so alive in a way I haven't seen before. So for me it was just I want to make a game with a time loop. Everything is real time, like it happens and you can miss it, and you can also like find things that I can do things like this just happened once. There is like stuff that can be hard to find, but like happens, like small details that happens only once in a loop, but when you find it.
You sort of touched on it before, but like, so you're developing this in Unity, right?
Yeah.
And is it so? It's C#, the coding language. So to ask like a bit nerdy question, is there a lot of stuff happening in Void Update, or do you like? Because when you do, for people who don't know, in Void Update, that's stuff that happens every frame. Is there a lot of things happening there? Because that will worsen the performance. But because when you do this, what we're talking about is to make people feel alive, they walk around and do stuff. I would imagine that there must be a lot of things happening in Void Update, or is there trigger boxes that will just sort of automatically spawn them to a spot? You sort of touched on it before.
Yeah. So it's not a lot of things happening in update. It is like when you enter a room, it checks the time, what time it is, and then each character have like their own schedule that is just updated by certain conditions. Like each piece of that schedule has a condition, like has this happened, or like, yeah, is this supposed to happen? And then it has like an animation tied to it. So and that animation has like a start time when it's supposed to start. So when I enter a room, I just check like, is this animation, should it start like in a while? Has it already started? And then if like it has already started, then I can see that it's like 3 seconds too late for this to start. So then I spawn in the character and I set that animation to play with a 3 seconds like offset. So it's only when I like...
So that animation, for example, it will sort of it will jump in 3 seconds into that animation when you enter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
So I have everything is animation based for the characters. So it checks how long is this animation, how late is it, like when was it about to start, and then I can jump in, like play the animation with an offset, like start it 3 seconds later or something like that.
Wow.
So then it's like when I enter the room, everything, it checks like what is supposed to happen now, and then it spawns it in, and then there's no update function. Then the animation takes over and they do their stuff.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah, very cool. And so you talked about a demo. So is this gonna be a demo that's gonna be publicly available at some point, or will people have to?
It is publicly available.
It is.
Yeah, it's live on Steam. I just had a dancing competition in my Discord server this weekend in the demo.
Cool, very cool. Nice. Well, then I will absolutely make sure that we link this so people can try this and understand more about what we're talking about. So very cool. The whole experience, it's just somehow it's sort of akin to Mullimek, I think. Something about the feeling rings sort of like Mullimek. I don't know why, but
voice
and
actors
it's sort
too.
of something.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of like, this is something I wanna like show my mom and dad who never plays games and stuff. Somehow this like feels like it's sort of can connect on a higher level or something than most games can. It's just special how you accomplish that somehow. I don't know if that's only for Swedish people or, have you had any feedback like from non-Swedish people?
Yeah,
or,
I think I don't know if it
what has been the feedback?
I don't know if it is like non-Swedish people, but I mean I had like comments here and there that like say, oh, this looks like the like educational games 90s stuff.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, I love those games. Because they had this hand painted feeling to it, and I just really love hand painted games. So yeah, I know a lot of Swedish games that were like graphically looked a little bit like this in like 20 years ago. But I don't know if that was popular outside of Sweden though. But maybe it was. Hopefully.
Yeah, I wanna. I mentioned this in some previous episodes. It's so cool that we who were kids when Nintendo came out and all that stuff, we are the ones making games now, and it's just so cool to see. I mean, this game is a great example of someone who grew up about the same time as me, and in the 90s and all that stuff, and like the things you picked up as a child that inspired you to make this game. It's just like, and the result is so different in so many ways than other games. So it's just like, not sure where I'm going with this, but something about, we who grew up with games, we're making the games now and they look different, and the inspiration is different than from the people who made the games when we grew up and so on. I think this is kind of like a neat result of that. Yeah, where we get inspiration from and all that. It's cool. But it's fun to hear that even non-Swedish people sort of get something out of it.
Yeah, I mean, mostly the audience is Swedish, but I hope it has qualities that could take it outside of Sweden as well. Hopefully.
Yeah, and I sort of thought like I talked about this on this podcast before, but I recently like wrote an article about how to like learn languages with games, and in my case I used Final Fantasy to learn Japanese. And I thought like when playing this game that this game, I don't know if that is the case or not, but I thought that it would be like a good candidate to learn Swedish, I think. Or at least like, I don't know, like regular Swedish, or more like not the stuff you hear on the news, but rather like how people actually talk, sort of. Really, I think it's sort of a bold choice that you actually have it in Swedish also, and not just in English, and also that in the title that you have a Swedish word there and not just completely translated to English.
Yeah, I thought like, yeah, Orten is just a word. I mean, you don't need to know what it means. I guess it's just a title. So, but yeah, I mean, it is supposed to take place in Sweden, so the characters are Swedish and stuff like that. And you don't have to understand what they're saying either, because there is subtitles, text. They don't say the actual sentence that is printed out. They just do some like a random phrase when you talk to them as well. So I mean, you can see it as gibberish. Like if you play Zelda, for example, they just have some gibberish lines whenever you talk to a character. You don't need to hear what they say. So I thought to apply the same.
And I think this is a like dyslexic point of view thing, but Orten, there's a game called Axiom Verge, and I heard about this game through podcasts for ages, and it sounded like something I really wanted to play, but I could not for the life of me figure out how the fuck do you spell it, and I couldn't even find it if I tried to Google some sort of something like an axe, and like I tried to figure out what the hell the game is because I overheard it. But the fact that you say Orten, which to non-Swedes will sound like weird, but then was the case, that's anyone can hear what that is and could type that and find the game. So that's good.
Yeah, I guess I have to say Orten. Orten.
Orten
Yeah.
Was The Case. It's probably how people pronounce it.
Yeah.
But there was a game that I never played, and I can't even remember it because it was made by some French people, and it was a pun in French, and that's the title of the game. And I have no clue. I could never find the game because I had no idea how to spell it, and also because I just heard it on a podcast. So that was just my little nerdy take on naming games. It should be easy, or something that you can at least hear what it is. Yeah, Orten it's good. It's easy, and if it's not, at least you have Was The Case, and that's how people can find it for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're listening to this, you will have a link at the top of the description. So just click that, and you will get to the demo, I think.
Yes.
Perfect. And I think we're starting to get over 1 hour. So before we close the episode, Rune, do you have any last questions or anything like that?
No, I feel satisfied.
Good. And before we let you go, Oskar, do you wanna just plug the game, and where can they find updates about it, and can they wishlist it or buy it in the future, or just give us all you got?
Yeah, the Steam page is the best place to find it right now. So Orten Was The Case. Orten Was The Case on Steam. And it also contains a link to my Discord and my social media. You can find me on all the social media platforms as well. Same name from Steam. You can wishlist it. I appreciate every single wishlist. It's not easy to reach out these days. So all the support is greatly appreciated, and feel free to join my Discord. Sometimes I have a little community challenge where I hand out some like t-shirts or posters or whatever, and also where you can ask questions and stuff like that.
Cool.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks a lot for doing this episode. It's sort of again, I've only played the game for a little while, but I feel like I'm really already a fan of it, so I really look forward to playing the whole game when I get the chance to. So absolutely, thank you so much for your hard work and for doing this episode.
Yes.
Thank you so much for letting me join. It was super fun.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're most welcome back anytime. I think, if not else, we could do another episode when both you and Rune have released your games, and you could like compare the journey perhaps, because there's so many similarities, I think, between those.
Yes.
Yeah.
But my game now, I think it's over a year away, so.
Cool. I must check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so thank you again for doing this episode. Thank you, Rune, for being my co-host as always. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Bye.